What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So I read a comment a while ago on one of our videos, and somebody said that Gotham Knights is one of those games where the enemies are just damaged sponges. Now, I kind of didn't necessarily say much because I was like, well, this is probably coming from a misunderstanding of what kind of game Gotham Knights is. Because one thing Gotham Knights is an RPG, a game that you actually have to play using the resources and the tools that you have in order for you to pretty much go ahead, leverage them, and take down enemies with ease. Now, I didn't necessarily say much because I thought, well, maybe this is not the time to have this conversation, but I thought today, with a little case study, we're able to get the job done. Now, there are different enemy types in this game with different health pools, and these enemy types are also vulnerable to different kinds of damage modifiers or different kinds of abilities that you have. Now, this is something a lot of people have missed because they don't necessarily implement these tools. They really think in their minds that enemy NPCs are bullet sponges. Now, over the course of the time talking about this particular scenario, basically about a minute plus, you've noticed that I've pretty much downed over half a dozen enemies with very simple, tactics, just basically beating them and so on and so forth. But I am geared up to get the job done. It's not just a matter of just beating or hitting enemies. I'm hitting them, especially using timed attacks or time strikes, and also getting the job done by gearing up to use something that they're very vulnerable to, which is concussive damage. Now, many people did not necessarily know, with these enemy types that the developers had actually put together, some sort of a weakness definition for each enemy AI type. Example, here you have the regulators. The regulators have their weaknesses because they use cryo and so on and so forth, and they use some of their electric shock mechanisms. You can pretty much get them using fire damage, poison damage, and you can use concussive damage, which I realized, and some of you were telling me, but I didn't really pay attention, that concussive damage, they're very, very prone to it, actually. I mean, if you notice, once I hit them a little bit with my, projectile weapon, you see the concussive thing over their head, which opens them up to be taken down with ease. So in gearing up, you really have to go ahead and do the, search and reveal, or the, seeking out, figuring out, all it is that you have to do in this game. And the gear is actually, in my opinion, abundant to pretty much get you the job done. So I also realized somebody was asking me, what is the best build to use in Gotham Knights? What build is the best build? And I was on stream that day and I said, the truth is the gear that's the best gear is the gear that is, that the enemy NPCs have the, worst affinity to, in a sense. So basically it's the gear that is designated to destroy them as quickly as you possibly can. You also have your build, like your critical hits and your critical hit damage and your ranged critical damage, which is also a modifier that's within your gear to be able to allow for you to add damage, basically get more critical hit damage to your enemies, thereby deleting huge chunks of their health. Once you follow this particular premise and you follow this paradigm, you'll realize that this game is actually a cakewalk for the most part. I think a lot of people are into Arkham, and for the most part, Arkham did everything for you. You just basically use your 3 buttons and then you were done. Whereas here, you kind of have to go ahead and figure out, okay, who am I fighting in terms of enemy NPC factions, and what is the big deal about them? You also have to realize, okay, I'm dealing with enemy types of this nature, like the heavies. Obviously, they're armored NPCs in a sense, and they will have a little bit more resistance to your attacks. And this is just with Robin. You can play, a similar pattern with Batgirl. You can play a similar pattern with Red Hood. If you spec very well, you'll realize that Red Hood also has different kinds of damage modifiers with his melee weapons and with his ranged weapons. He's a ranged character. You're supposed to be fighting when you're using Red Hood with the Y button, and you're supposed to spec very well using a set of sidearms that does showcase exactly, what kind of damage modifiers the enemy NPCs are going to pretty much, not be resistant to. I remember on that stream, everybody was kind of watching and they were like, oh, what is the big deal about this? And I said, one thing about Red Hood is you can just basically tweak your gear. So right there on stream, I tweaked my gear and I just implemented using poison bullets, and boy, everybody was, basically getting that damage over time. Some people don't also realize that with the options that you have here, you can pretty much respond to anything that the enemy NPCs throw at you. I remember a reviewer basically saying something like, this game doesn't really give you a lot of options. Sometimes an enemy NPC is about to take an action and you don't have any options against it. Your momentum abilities are what those options are. It's not like Arkham where you jump over or you do like, your timed, counter dodges. This game needs you for, to use those tools. Example, if enemy NPCs are about to shoot you, what you can do using Robin is you can deflect the bullets. You can pretty much time, the attack to be able to go ahead and say, you're not going to hit me. I'm going to deflect all of your shots. Right here in this particular footage where I'm fighting, you can see this enemy NPC points their gun at me. But as I realize that they're actually pointing their gun and they're aiming at me with, that damage modifier, I basically go ahead and activate my momentum ability, and I deflect basically all the incoming bullets by using it to pretty much hit enemy NPCs. And one of the bullets eventually hits him and he goes into a concussive state where I can basically ignore him for now, or I can go for him later on. And the other one tried the same thing, and I went ahead and I think I did it twice here in this particular fight sequence. But these are just some of the things that you have in this game that makes the combat a lot of fun, because a lot of the complaints about the combat being slow or the enemies, being, damage sponges, to me just reeks of, I don't know how to play this game. And, I want to play a game that's like Arkham, that the developers made very simple for me, in a sense. That's what Arkham did. I mean, Stephen Hill is on record, or I don't know if it's Stephen Hill, I think it's one of the combat designers, is on record saying that, we made the game where you feel straight like a bad A once you get out of the gate. You just start tapping the button. It's kind of intuitive. But this is an RPG. RPGs don't hold your hand much. They kind of give you the tools you need, and then you go ahead and you figure out how they all work. So this is probably, something that I wanted to go ahead and pay, close attention to. I wanted to make sure that we pointed it out in this video, because yes, many people might say, but, look at the enemy NPCs. They're taking so much damage before you take them down, and so on and so forth. But I was just testing out concussive damage with the mob. Usually I'll use, what's the name? I'll use cryo damage for them, because that really does, oh my gosh, that thing really, it melts them into oblivion. And sometimes with, say, if I'm playing against, freaks, or if I'm playing against even the regulators, I'll use fire and I'll use their poison as well, just to make sure that, I destroy them very easily. So get in the game. If you're playing the game and you're wondering how you can destroy these bad guys, look through all of the options that you have, do some trial and error. You can watch a video that pretty much spells it out for you. I think it all, makes sense at the end of the day. Thanks for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Peace out.